I'm Graham Jones and welcome to Channel KT4, broadcasting live on Facebook and YouTube. You can join in by sending in questions during the show. Just press the comments button on the screen. Don't forget to like and click on the share buttons. If you're watching on YouTube, please click to subscribe to Channel KT4. I'm so pleased to welcome to my virtual studio Jonathan Lees, founder and managing director at Epsom and Ewell Food Bank and East Surrey Poverty Truth Commission. That's a mouthful. Welcome, Jonathan, and thank you for joining me here on Channel KT4.
Thanks for having me, Graham. Pleasure to be here and really keen to share about our work and what we're doing in the community.
And we're really keen, Jonathan, to hear all about it. You know, I've been doing a bit of research on the food bank, and I'm just amazed, and I'm looking forward to talking about logistics, how it all works, how you're dealing with it in COVID. There's so much going on. I can't believe that the food poverty exists in the United Kingdom in the 21st century, but sadly it does. Jonathan, can you tell me a little about food poverty and what it means to people in our community today?
Yeah, it's horrific that it does still exist. And I say to people that that often question us why we have a food bank in Epsom and Ewell and the surrounding areas, is that surely there's nobody that's hungry around here. And I'd say actually within 5 minutes of where you live, you could walk to a house that we have probably fed them at some point, but they would be struggling. And don't get me wrong, I don't believe that everybody that is in hunger comes to us. I think a lot of people are too proud and they hide away and they struggle, especially over this period of COVID, where they've just literally been locking themselves away. And we have been finding people that are coming out, that are talking to us because of the struggles they've had over this last 12 months. And as a food bank, we've been in existence for a long time now, and it is horrific to see and hear the stories of people, of parents that are saying, I will only eat one meal a day to ensure that my children have 3 meals a day. And that's not like a one-off occurrence. That's something that happens for weeks and weeks. I remember when we looked about starting, somebody said, oh, but is there a need? And we had come across this family that for 2 weeks, because their money had run out, they had just been eating porridge twice a day, and they'd ended up using the Kingston Food Bank. And so we knew there was a need, and since then it's just grown and grown.
That's absolutely amazing. I've got a little slide here, and I was amazed when one of your team sent this over to me, I think Naomi, and it says 1 in 5. You know, I mean, that's really is scary stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. As I said, it is horrific. And across the country, those levels are high. Fortunately, in our community, it's not such a high level, I believe. But the issue we have is the stark contrast between those that are in poverty and those that have, the haves and the have-nots. And that is the wrestle that if you are struggling, and actually you see your neighbours or your friends not struggling, it makes you feel 10 times worse. And the projects and communities that we have going on don't always have some of that pure support that you need, which is why we as a food bank try to help people and do bits more than that as well, which I know we'll come on to talk about later in the programme.
Yeah. Jonathan, by the way, we've got our first commenters come through, and I'll great new technology here, Jonathan. Here it comes on screen. There we go. This is from Steve McCormack. Afternoon, Graham. Yeah. Another important local topic being discussed. I know that Stephen is our recently elected Surrey County Councillor for Epsom and Ewell. So Stephen, thank you for supporting the show, and thank you for acknowledging the importance of the great work of Epsom and Ewell Food Bank. So that's good to see. Thanks very much indeed. Now, the other bit, of course, is, and I've got to ask it, I know everybody's talking about it all the time, how we in the community, and certainly how the food bank has coped with COVID and how that has impacted on food poverty in the United Kingdom. Jonathan, what's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, COVID's just been horrendous at every single level. And when it hit into us, we have had to basically massively change our operation. So last year, probably 18 months, it's about last March, wasn't it? That suddenly this was beginning to happen. We're beginning to enter into lockdown. And we realised that we couldn't run our open centres. We used to historically, and we will hopefully soon go back to running 5 open centres where people would come. And in that centre, we try and support people, we give them a cup of tea and a cake, sit down and chat. It's just a really friendly, non-prejudicial setting where they can come in, and we'll give them the food that's based for their family. But now, obviously, we couldn't do that because of COVID. So we've run a delivery network. And we've been delivering food to people's houses. We cover Epsom and Ewell. We also cover chunks of Mole Valley around the Leatherhead and Fetcham and Bookham area. And we also do bits of Reigate and Banstead around Tadworth and Banstead and Kingswood and areas. And so we've been taking the food to their houses in boxes. I think there's a picture somewhere, one of the screens of the boxes that we deliver out to people. And we take that food to them, and prior to dropping the food, we will ring the client. We will ask them how many's in their family, if they've got any allergies, if they've got any animals and pets. And if we can provide that, if we've been donated it, we will give it to the client. So COVID hit us huge. The difference in our figures, we saw a 236% increase from 2019 to 2020 as our figures just roared up. And that was like in 2019, we fed basically 5,300 of people, whereas in 2020, we actually fed over 12,500 people. So the demand roared, the donations fortunately went up, although we did have a month, I think it was around about May, when we hit that initial lockdown and literally nobody moved, where our donations dropped massively off, but fortunately they went back up from there. So we actually have given out, I think in the last 12 months, we've given out nearly 150 tonnes worth of food to people in our community. And it's not just the food that we've been able to provide or offer. So what we've worked out is that we've been ringing clients, talking to clients, having Zooms and FaceTimes with them, because actually a lot of these clients have not been interacting with anybody else. So a lot of isolated people really struggling, no interaction. And people have been saying to us, oh, you know what, you're the only agency, the only project that's been talking to us over this period. And I know many agencies initially had dynamics of working out how to deal, and obviously as the lockdowns carried on, people worked out ways to interact with their community and their clients again. But it's just been sad that there's been so many people that, because of COVID, have literally just been isolated. And we're still talking to people now who we know are not going out because they're still worried about what might happen.
Yeah, I can see, Jonathan, that firstly, I'm staggered by the figures and the tons of food going out. I mean, that is amazing in itself. So, thank you and congratulations on that. But what comes with that within the COVID world is, of course, you've got to sort out logistically how you're going to do that. So I presume you're going to need more volunteers, not less. You're going to need more people. You're going to have to centralize. You've got to get the food in time to the central collection point, and then you've got to get a whole distribution network, which is, as you said, going Banstead, it's going Mole Valley, it's going Epsom and Ewell. I mean, that's a big district to cover. I mean, how did you cope with all of that?
Yeah, I suppose it was one of those things. It was kind of like you didn't really get a choice. We had to go. We had to do it. We had to deliver. We had to meet the needs that were going on. And fortunately, I've got a brilliant team of staff and volunteers that have been working around with us. The one of the other impacts of COVID was obviously we had to go into bubbles. We had to have smaller teams. So we ended up having different teams in every day of the week. And then we did a lot of facilitation around working out our team of drivers, working out a system that could come in, pick the food up and go, and have no contact with other volunteers, because obviously we had to keep those teams quite tight. I think on our peak days, we could be doing 30 plus deliveries in a day. And that was obviously feeding 300 odd people across a week, which was just ridiculously scary at times, and it was crazily busy. But fortunately, we've worked out our systems. The food gets donated into us. We will then check the dates on it, pack that away to give it some time. We will then use other foods to serve out and go to the clients as we pack the boxes, and that goes out another system. So yes, it's been complicated, but it's worked. We've basically done most people we've done within a 24 to 48 hour referral period, most of the 24 Ks, and it's gone to 48 hours if they've come in on a Friday, so over the weekend stuff. But for us, we're looking forward to going back to that face-to-face service, which for us is what it's about as food bank. The food bank for us is not about just delivering somebody food. The food bank is about actually supporting somebody. That my ethos is that you come to the food bank once. I never want you to come back, because we've managed to support you, that you don't need to use the food bank ever again. And I know, again, as we chat about some of the poverty thing, that's the agenda. So even though over COVID we've supported a lot of people, a lot of times with our delivery service, it's not the place where we want to stay. It's been for COVID. And actually moving on, we now need to say, okay, how can we address these issues that have actually been exposed in COVID?
Yeah, quite amazing. I mean, actually talking about moving on, I'm going to take you a picture which is looking back. I know that's a bit odd, but because this is a picture that you want to see as soon as possible. And I love this picture. This is when all the food's coming in. You've got all your volunteers there. This is around, I think is this the harvest festival time?
Yeah. It's one of those things that pre-COVID sort of year, harvest I used to say between September and December, we basically collected something like 60 to 70% of all our food donations for the year. It just used to swarm in. So they used to come in crates, and we just used to have teams of people that come in and sort it through, because it's just masses. And obviously the critical thing for us is that, a lot of stuff is in date. It is in date, but close to date. So we need to make sure we use that product that is nearly going to go out of date, because we don't want to give anybody any out of date food. And actually these people might be struggling, but it doesn't mean they deserve an out of date food or something that's on the verge of going out of date. So we sort all that out. And as I said, we have one of the pictures you see in a minute is the 2 containers at the back, which is where we store a lot of our food, and we carry roughly 20 odd tons of food in our stock, just because we have lots of certain types of food, but there are some foods that we constantly run on, like the line actually is about to run out, it's about to go. So we're managing that process constantly.
That moves nicely on, because actually, Jonathan, I was looking at your website, and it says there, can you help this week, please? Which is about looking at the specifics of food. And I'm just going to read this little bit here. It says, this week, we need help with dog food, urgent, hot chocolate, ulcers, biscuits, tinned meat, tea bags, tinned tomatoes, tinned vegetables, spaghetti sauce, pumped soap washing up liquid, shampoo, children's toothpaste, female deodorant, male deodorant, treats and snacks for children, bags for life, can be donated at the usual supermarket points, or bring in donations. I mean, that's quite specific. I mean, which is good to do that.
Yeah, and we've learned that. So when we first started, we would just say, hey, got some food, donate your food. But what I discovered is that I decided most people donate us a tin of baked beans, a tin of soup, and probably a packet of pasta. And if they're going to go veg-wise, they'll go a tin of sweet corn. So those 4 particular projects just roared, and we have more baked beans, more pasta, more soup than anything else in our stock. And it used to be tea bags as well. It always makes me laugh when you see something you used to have. I remember once having a mountain of tea bags. I worked out how many tea bags we had in our stock, and suddenly we're running out again. But what we've worked out is that people often say to us, what do you really need? What can I buy that is actually essential? So every week on our Facebook, on our website, on our Twitter and Instagram accounts, we will put out a list saying, these are what we need this week. And it's so much more helpful for us to have what we need than just to have additional extra stock of items that we've already got lots of. And dog food is just as touch as a random one, but we have a lot of people that have dogs, that's their priority in their life, and that's their companionship. So if we can give them dog food, we'll do that. We think that's a key part of life.
Yeah, I must admit, that's what I was just going to ask you about, because, I read that and I thought, I would never think, when I'm in the supermarket, I never think, well, yeah, I'll go and pick up a can of dog food and put it into the food bank. I shouldn't say, Jonathan, but I never even thought about toothpaste or deodorant. I'm probably like anybody else and just thinking, well, there you go, tin of soup, that'll help. Spaghetti, that's another good one. Fresh vegetables, I'm not sure how long is it going to take to get where it's supposed to be going. So loads of questions are going through my head when I'm about to try and put something into the food bank. So it's Yeah, it's you can see it's far more complicated. But I also didn't know, Jonathan, that of course, you've got your website, your Twitter account, and Instagram and all of that, and Facebook, of course. So you've got all of that where people can go and just check out what you need this week. So my big shout out here is, come on, guys, go onto one of those social media platforms, check out what the guys at Epsom and Ewell Food Bank need, and just chuck something in from your shopping that fits the profile. Sounds good.
And that would be most appreciated. I mean, just touching on the food. We tend to only do dog and cat food, but we have had stories. I've had people that have come to me and says, I've been offered a house by the council, but I can't take my dog with me. And so they are literally pondering between, do I take my dog or do I take the house? And they will say to us, literally, the dog is the only thing that has stood by me my entire life. It's the only thing I completely trust. Everything else in society either let me down or abused me. And so it is, you can see this real dilemma, and that's that dynamic. And that's where I think, actually, if we can give them the dog food to support them with that, then we would support them, because that's the only consistent thing in their life. And that is sad, but there's a lot of people like that. And so that's why we try and offer as much as we can. And even the toiletries, to go into the shop, deodorant and shampoo is very expensive. And I remember this one client coming in a few years ago now, and he basically was looking for a job, and literally, I know it sounds really bad, but there was an aroma around him, and I thought, he's going to struggle to get the job if he stays like that. And so we actually were able to help him with far more toiletries to allow him to actually be able to be presentable to go in to get this job. And as I said, my mission is to support everybody never to come back to the food bank again. So it's not just food, it's the whole package, the toiletries, the whole lot. And so that's why we collect those things and donate them back out to the clients as well.
I think that's absolutely amazing, Jonathan. And, one thing I love about being able to present the program is I get to know all this information, and hopefully, the folks that are watching this, that's going to help them make some good choices, which will benefit the Epsom and Ewell Food Bank. And in saying that, if you're watching now and you're watching live, then please don't be shy. Just put a comment out there. Ask a question to Jonathan. I'll put it up on screen, as you saw me do with Steve McCormack. And we'll try and help answer any questions that you might have. In the meantime, Jonathan, you're also dealing with Poverty Truth Commission. What's all that about, Jonathan? I'm going to put a little thing on screen for them. There you go. Surrey Poverty Commission.
Yeah, so basically, it's probably a couple of years ago now, about 4 years ago now, we were wrestling with this issue that over the last sort of 5 years, so we started in 2012, so we've been going 9 years now. And when we started, it was like, really, probably in our heads, we thought it'd be a couple of years, but really didn't think there'd be a demand for the food bank going on that long. So here we are, 5-6 years later, going, this is ridiculous. We are still rising in our numbers. How can we address that? So we worked towards looking at what we could do to identify what the issues of poverty were in our community. And that led us to establishing the Surrey Poverty Truth Commission, which ran for just under 2 years and finished in December last year, just literally around COVID, which was a bit difficult, but hey ho. Where we brought together roughly 15 people who have lived and experienced poverty. So they are in poverty, with 15 what we call community movers and shakers. So these are people from the council, Surrey, Epsom and Ewell, Mole Valley, business owners, a head teacher, people from the police, a look at the bishop was involved. So it was quite a dynamic spread of people. And the whole ethos was, it wasn't the structure, it was just about saying, okay, let's just talk. And we allowed the people in poverty to tell their stories. So what it became is, when you sat in your office to go, right, I'm going to deliver a strategy. Here's an example. I'm going to move a service from Epsom to, say, Tadworth. You just move the service, but you don't think about the knock-on impact that service might have on somebody by moving or being relocated. And what it might mean is, as we discovered, is one client that lived in Epsom, had no transport, lived literally on the breadline. They could not afford the addition in the bus fare to get from Epsom to Tadworth. So it technically took that service away from that person. Now, in one sense, that's that's an example. But what we're doing is, by putting these people together to talk, is actually putting a face to the story. So another story was somebody talking about the fact that they go to the fridge, they open the fridge, there's nothing in it. And as you can see those people, and you begin to get behind the thinking to understand what's going on, it affects you and how you then create your policy. And the ethos of the commission was basically to change the culture. We can change a few policies here and there, but what we need to do is to change the culture of an organisation, change the culture of a community, and about saying, how can we eradicate poverty? What do we do that actually keeps people in poverty? One of the illustrations I threw out that came through it was, most of us have window cleaners. How quickly do we pay that bill when they stick it through the door? Do you pay it straight away, or do you wait a week? You think, well, I'll get around to it. We know that cash is king, and most small businesses disintegrate because cash flow is so difficult. And yet actually they've done that service, so why shouldn't we just pay them straight away? Because we're keeping that person in poverty by not paying that bill, even though they've done that work. And we've had illustrations of people that have come into the food bank who self-employed solicitors working for big corporates, and the corporate basically says, I'll pay you at 60 days. 60 days comes, they don't pay it. Such a big corporate, it's a nightmare to try and track that money. Eventually, 120 days, they pay the bill. They don't need to wait that long. All they've done is kept that person in poverty for another 60 days. And sometimes they then have to rely on us for us to support them through that period. So the commission is about exploring what keeps people in poverty. How can we change the culture of what we're doing? How does your organisation keep people there? And what can you do to address what's going on? Have you ever looked at how quick you pay your invoices? How quick you respond to expenses? Things like that are happening in the community.
I actually completely understand what you're saying, Jonathan. I'm in the entertainment business, and I can go out through my little company and go out and perform, and then I send an invoice, and I wait and I wait and I wait, and a lot of time I'm also employing other people to deliver the entertainment that they need. So I've got this knock on of all these other people who also need that sort of money, So I get it. Yeah, I really do. And I think it's a well highlighted point, Jonathan. Thanks for bringing that up. I've got another comment actually from Stephen Colmack, who's obviously great to see you again. He's enjoying the show, and he says, great to illustrate the bigger picture. How can we best help? Now, that's going straight to the heart of the matter, Jonathan. So Steve McCormack, our local councillor, is saying, how can we help?
Yeah, and the reality is, as I said before, my ethos is that I'd like to come back in a year's time and say, hey, we're going to shut the food bank because there's a need. So for us, it's then about working out the community. The bottom line is cash is king, as we've just been exploring. And I think there's two ways around cash. One is your benefits. So we know that it's virtually impossible for us to change the benefit system, but the benefits ideally should be increased to cover and support people, because basically the benefits does not cover most people's expenses or bills, which is why there was such a demand about the £20 cash lift, which happened over COVID, and about keeping it, because that £20 makes such a significant difference to people's lives. The second aspect is obviously supporting people to develop their economic capacity so they can go back into jobs, that they can earn that money, that therefore they don't need to rely on a service like the food bank. So for us, how can we best help is actually to support people to develop their capacity to employ and to get into jobs. And part of that, I believe, is about changing the culture and how we employ people. So even in Surrey, we advertise jobs at full-time jobs, but if somebody that has not worked for a few years and you suddenly want to put them into a full-time job, what additional support are you willing to offer them to help them through that period? Because you're actually challenging their culture in what they've come through. And I'm not saying they can't, but what they need is the extra support to get them to the point where they've gone from not doing anything virtually to actually working full time. And I think it's exploring things like that, and it's exploring how can we make cash go further? How can we support them? And we're looking at a couple of initiatives that we hope will help people, because I said nobody wants to survive with a reliance on the food bank. So we try and offer other things. one of the things we've done since December with support from Surrey County Council actually is energy top-ups, where we have put nearly 25 grand worth of energy money onto people's key cards. But the energy top-up system is so antiquated and so convoluted, very difficult to work. And what we realise is, as we've been topping up people's accounts, is actually some people's debt can be like 2 grand on their energy, and they have to make a choice between, do I heat my house and it has been really cold? Do I keep my fridge cold because I've got medicines in it? Or do I cook a meal and because I need to eat? And it's those challenges. And sometimes I think we don't appreciate when we talk about making a choice, it's often between we're having Chinese or we're having curry tonight. Because actually for them, the choice is, do I cook or do I have heating in my house? That's not a choice. That's just, that is just difficult. And I believe that we can begin to explore services. I think that there's things we could do around energy. There's long-term changes. There's plans that as a community we could come together. And it is coming together to highlight poverty as an issue and to say, how can we stand together to support poverty? How can we beat it? What little things can we do to address it?
Yeah, but I also agree. I agree, of course, with everything that you're saying, Jonathan. But I'm also amazed to see that you're now providing other services to the ones that you've just talked about, like, of course, access to computers and laptops and all of those issues. So, I mean, you've got loads of different services that you're now providing, which are vital to people in the community who have got a little bit of difficulty.
Yeah, and again, it's kind of flowed. The food is essential, so you need food to survive. But as I said, I'll come back, and I know I probably sound really boring repeating it, but I don't want you to live on the food bank. So therefore, how can we support you? And the digital inclusions which started through our Poverty Truth Commission, some of the community and some of our business community, we're talking about the fact that a couple of boys, or a couple of, I think they were boys, but they were not allowed out to play at lunchtime because they needed to do some homework. They needed to do the homework on a laptop. They didn't have a laptop at home, therefore they had to stay in at playtime. So they lost out at playtime because they were poor. And we were like, hey, that's not right. Actually, how does that? And it's little things that you wouldn't potentially even think about, but that was genuine impact. They were poor, they lost out. So we started, and since then we've actually collected and given out over 300 laptops and tablets we do it through the schools because the schools know the people that need it. So we clean them, we sort them, and it goes out through that route. But actually that's one aspect. We offer counselling, we offer support, we support people on form filling, we will support them to get jobs, we will help them in any way. And we also just have a cup of tea and provide a bit of encouragement. Most people, yeah. That's right. As one guy said to me once, he said, John, you don't wake up one day and go, hey, today I'm going to be in poverty. It's a swirl of life events that take over, and before you know it, you're sunk. And so actually, if we can support somebody to get back up on their feet, to go again, support them, then we will do that. And this is obviously this photo of myself and Dee, who runs Epsom and Ewell Families page. And this is where they're promoting a tech service at Christmas where people are supporting us. So we try and do seasonal support as well, where we were providing people with vouchers to their local butchers so they could go and choose their food that they wanted. It wasn't something we were just giving to them. It was their choice. It's their dependence, and it's giving them that ability to move on. And we had people come back and say, do you know what? My daughter stayed for Christmas meal, first time ever, because I had a proper Christmas dinner. And I just thought, well, it was worth doing that.
Okay, Jonathan, I've got a couple of pictures here because we've actually talked about the donations, both financially, and we're now talking about things like laptops, various things like that. And of course, we've talked about how today, particularly during COVID, we're dealing with persuading people to donate the right types of food when they're at the supermarket and various things. If you don't mind, I'm going to throw up a couple of pictures and you can just give me a little overview on each one. I think the first one is from your donations warehouse. Here it is.
Yeah, so that's then our donation where we can drop food off at the moment, which is behind West Ewell Infant School off Roxley Lane down the driveway. And that's That, I mean, that could have been a business, a school, collection point, that amount of food that it's likely to bring in. And behind it, you can see one of our containers, which is where we store our food. But every food that comes in is checked for dates, checked for damage, weighed and sorted, and put back out, which is we weigh and sort it so we can track the volume of food that comes through.
That's brilliant. And I particularly like this one. And the title that came from Naomi was, she titled it for me as Wish List. Here it is.
So obviously you've given out a little bit of the wish list earlier. Sometimes we try and do a little photo shoot so that people can see the things we're looking at, and just they can get that. You can see the snacks and the treats and the pulses and the chopped tomatoes and the hot chocolate and the squashes. It's very diverse. We try and give a spread, and as I said, we try and give people what they need when they need it.
Yeah, I think I agree with you as well. And here's this is one of your food boxes, I think, is going to come up in a moment, Jonathan. So just tell us a little bit about this picture. There we go.
Yeah. So basically, as I said, this is how we've been working through COVID, is that we've been delivering out. We have trialed quite a few boxes. It's one of those logistical issues, but we found these boxes which were slightly more expensive, but they were much more substantial. So it meant our volunteers were able to stack them better and carry them better from the cars to the sort of community, to the houses of clients. But in here, you can see these two boxes, potentially a couple of people. It's got a spread of food in there, toilet roll. We never used to do toilet roll when we first started, but it literally, we got asked for it on, I think, our very first session. We all kind of looked at each other and went, of course, give somebody food, then actually we do need to give them toilet roll. And obviously in the pandemic, that became a very hot issue. So it's spreading our food, it's putting it out, packing it in the box with the lid, keeps it nice and tidy, and allows people to know where it's going.
That's brilliant. Look, Jonathan, we've talked a lot about the overwhelming, how we need to address poverty itself. How do you plan to tackle such an overwhelming task in the future? Plans for both Epsom and Ewell Food Bank and Poverty Truth Commission. Could you just give me a very brief overview of something you feel that you need to tell my viewers at this particular moment in time?
I think if I had a sort of really last minute thing would be to say, look at what you do, and are there things that you do that keep somebody in poverty? And that can be quite a hard question to ask, but it is just challenging ourselves and then saying, actually, what could you do to support somebody, to support an organisation that's going on, to allow them? I said, my desire is to close the food bank, but we've realised to do that, we need to provide support to people that they don't end up slipping into poverty and get caught in this have and have-nots in our community. And so the challenge is, so how can you do that? How can you look at that? What can you provide? And we will obviously continue to explore projects, and that's why we've morphed into various other things, because we want to support people not to stay in poverty. And sometimes that might just be have a cup of tea, a chat with somebody, look around you, say hello to somebody that's isolated. What's going on? How are they? How can you support them? How can you explore what's happening? Or come along, come and see us, come and volunteer, come and support us, whether it's financially. Obviously, we have no regular income, so all financial donations are greatly welcome, or donate food into what we're doing, and we would really appreciate that.
Thanks, Jonathan. That's really good. I've got to say, it's been an absolute pleasure, firstly, to meet you and chat with you, but also I'm learning so much more about Epsom and Ewell Food Bank than the simplistic bit about putting a tin of baked beans in the to donate that. All the things, but also the fascinating bit is you telling me about, are we keeping people in poverty? That is a question that I hadn't considered. And it's very, very important to look at the overview, going back to what Steve McCormack was saying, the big picture. How can we help? Well, we can pay our bills. I think that's right to do that. So, Jonathan, we've run out of time, sadly, but you've been a star. And can I just say a big thank you for all the amazing work that you're doing at the Epsom and Ewell Food Bank. And of course, around you, you've got a team of, I'm going to use a smart word here, erudite volunteers, right? Who are doing doing such great work. They're the best. They're skillful, and they're keeping the whole thing going, particularly through this very, very difficult time of COVID. So I just want to say a big thank you. And I look forward to touching base with you again in the not too distant future. Ladies and gentlemen, Jonathan Lees. Thank you very much indeed, Jonathan.
Thank you, Graham. Thanks for having us on. Appreciate it.
No, it's absolutely been my pleasure, Jonathan. Each week, I give a shout out to contributors to the Cuddingtonian magazine. This week, it's the turn of NL Flooring. So, and many thanks, guys, for your continued support for our local magazine. It really is important that we support our local magazines, whether it's here in Cuddington or whether it's somewhere else in Epsom Downs or wherever. So please continue to support your local magazines. This is Graham Jones on channel KT4. Join me next Tuesday at 12:30 when my guest will be Mark Swan. And Mark is from the Woodcote Millennium Green Trust. So until then, stay safe and bye now.